Welcome to Echoes of Scripture. In this week's show,
Emergency response teams available for anybody's kind of, during Fourth of
definitely the
July
famous,
parade.
yep. Well, absolutely. The heat exhaustion falling over, and also the hey, watch this. We lived in Iowa, and our school district, all the schools were named after astronauts. And I was going to Neil Armstrong Elementary at the time.
Ah,
And that year, we got school T-shirts, school spirit T-shirts that said Neil Armstrong and had Neil's face in the middle of it.
yep.
Elementary, and then I remember the stripes were the sleeves were red, white stripes, and then the shirt overall was blue and had this thing.
We watched the fireworks in D.C. standing right next to the Iwo Jima Memorial.
Oh wow!
The guys, holding the flag on that hill, and literally we're touching that, and the fireworks are going off all around, and it was incredible.
That's epic.
That was awesome. Yeah. ESV Study Bible here, it says the cross of Christ marks the decisive defeat of the demonic powers. On the cross, they were stripped of their power to accuse Christians before God. Nevertheless, these demons continue to exist and they exercise power to incite evil, so Christians must continue to struggle with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a spiritual battle. He put the death blow to Satan and his minions. Now it's just skirmishes and battles until the end.
Hello, everybody. This week's show, Greg and I continue our conversation about Hebrews chapter 2 and a couple other things. So thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to sharing our lives with you. So if you're ready, let's go.
No doubt.
So speaking of which, this is the big week, 250 years old.
I know. That's pretty exciting. I'm sure everybody's, they're probably going to have like as many emergency response teams available for anybody's kind of, during Fourth of July parade.
Yep. Well, absolutely. The heat exhaustion falling over, and also the hey, watch this that'll be going on. Can you wire together 17 M80s?
Hey, do you have a favorite memory from 4th of July?
Actually, I was giving blood today.
Uh-huh.
And I was talking to Susie, and she brought up the bicentennial, and I really do remember it. I would have been 8 years old, and we lived in Iowa, and our school district, all the schools were named after astronauts. And I was going to Neil Armstrong Elementary at the time.
Ah.
And that year, we got school T-shirts, school spirit T-shirts that said Neil Armstrong and had Neil's face in the middle of it. Elementary. And then I remember the stripes were the sleeves were red, white stripes, and then the shirt overall was blue and had this thing. And then it must have been during the holiday was when we came from Iowa to visit my grandparents in Cincinnati. And shoot, I cannot remember the travel lodge. So everybody knows about Buc-ee's, right?
Right. Yeah.
But the first Buc-ee's were these A-frame houses that had gas stations, and they sold the pecan logs. And
it's like a Howard Johnson type of thing.
Well, it wasn't a hotel. It was just
okay.
fuel and
oh, okay, gotcha.
Convenience place.
Yeah.
And I can't remember, but anyway, someone will know. There were these A-frame thing, and they were all along the interstates. And when we were in there, I saw like a school spirit pennant, but it said "Spirit of 1776," and I just had to. So I blew my whole. We weren't even in Cincinnati yet, but I blew my whole vacation money buying the 1776 pendant. But I kept that on my little boy's room, me being the little boy, on the wall, probably 3 or 4 years. So,
very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. How about you?
One that comes to mind was with a bunch of our college friends, some of whom were spending their summer in Washington, D.C. They got temporary jobs and then also got some like leadership training. in the summer while they were having their had a part-time job. We went out to visit them over the 4th, and we watched the fireworks in DC standing right next to the Iwo Jima Memorial.
Oh, wow.
The guys, holding the flag on that
Yeah,
hill, and
yeah.
literally we're touching that, and the fireworks are going off all around, and it was incredible.
That's epic.
That was awesome. Yeah.
Very, very cool. So, what many people don't recall is while we were having the American Revolution, the French were having their revolution.
Mm,
And, Benjamin Franklin was going over there and asking for some help. And they're like, we're kind of busy, but we'll send you a boat or two. Um, so about the same time, the countries were both, well, the US was started and France was restarted. We've had one constitution the whole time. Now we've definitely had, Julie and I were talking about this, we've had amendments,
right.
but there hasn't been anything that has changed the structure and framework of our government. We still have the three distinct um, balancing powers and all that stayed in place. But since that same time, France has had 19 distinct constitutions.
Wow.
And they have cycled through. They even went back a couple of times where they had, kind of like a kingdom,
Oh.
and
Mhm,
dictatorship and stuff like
mhm,
that during
mhm.
during that time. So
Wow.
it's pretty remarkable. And then I haven't had a chance to fact check this, but look, there's a report that over the 5,800 years of recorded human history, the average length of time that a government stays in structure is between 15 and 19 years.
Oh, okay. It's
And
not
the
very
US
long.
Const no, the US Constitution is the longest standing um, governmental document and function out there. So, you
Yep.
know, Ming dynasties and things like that, there are hundreds and maybe even like thousands of years, but
Hmm.
the ones that are currently in roll.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So then, of course, I had to, you know, um, there's all this concept that the U.S. is a Judeo-Christian
Hmm.
country, and
Hmm.
it largely is. I mean, that was most of the people who came over and settled would have had
Right.
this theming in their life. But what's interesting is direct connections between the Declaration of Independence, and that's the thing that's 250 years old. The Constitution was ratified in 1788, and a lot of people remember that the Revolutionary War was going on in 1776, but it actually started
Hmm.
in 1775 and didn't end until 1783 and the Treaty of Paris. But the Declaration of Independence is 250 years old, and in that, some really important attributes to the Christian Bible is the equality and rights, and that comes from Leviticus 25:10. I'm not going to read the verses, just give folks the addresses so they can look them up. But
Sure.
Leviticus 25:10, and then Romans 2:11 through 12, just talking about fairness and equality. Moral governments, Exodus 19:7 through 8, and Deuteronomy 16:18 through 19. Um, Leadership and accountability are in those verses. Liberty and freedom from Galatians 5:1, and then justice and responsibility, Proverbs 24:23 and Proverbs 28:21. And then the New Testament, First Peter 2:15 through 16. So some pretty cool stuff
Yeah.
for us to feel great about. Later on, I do want to talk about, of course, the things that are going on with the World Cup and
Oh, okay. Yeah. I
all
saw this.
yeah, yeah, all the Asians and South Africans and the Europeans that are getting their first real taste of America. So that's pretty cool.
Hmm.
But
That's
so
awesome.
yeah. All right. Well, you ready to jump into a review of last weekend, last Sunday?
Sure.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, we haven't really talked about communion devotionals before, so and I didn't tee you up for this, but
Hmm.
you want to kind of walk through how Darby Creek Church approaches communion?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the elders will typically share a very small portion of scripture that relates to some facet of what Christ came to do in terms of our redemption, right? It can be any kind of angle on it. And then and so we see communion as a memorial, if you will.
Okay.
That's the elements, the cup of juice and the unleavened wafer, piece of bread. Those are symbolic of Jesus's body and blood that were shed for us on the cross. And but there is, like I said, the person that is the elder will share, 5 to 10 minutes on some aspect of what Christ has done for us and how it impacts our lives, and we give thanks for the salvation that he offers us. Yeah,
Yeah, very cool. And the the frequency of that is twice a month.
yeah, yeah. Second and fourth Sundays.
Got it. So yeah, so and this past week, Pastor Charlie, who's our worship leader and also does a lot of evangelical work and community work, he took a turn at it, and he selected Colossians 2:13 through 15. And I'll read that. And you who were dead in your trespasses and uncircumcision of your flesh, God made alive together with him, having forgiven us all our trespasses by canceling the record of debt that stood against us with his legal demands. So that's pretty strong statement there, right? So despite
Yeah.
us being an absolute violation of God's legal demands, Christ came and did this. This he set aside, nailing it to the cross. He disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame by triumphing over them in him. So I thought that was pretty cool. We think about, as we're celebrating and remembering the brave people who said, "Hey, enough is enough. America deserves to be its own country."
Hmm.
Um, Christ saying enough is enough. Mankind needs to be freed from sin. And instead of highlighting that he was nailed to the cross, um, Christ set aside the debt and all the sin and nailed it
Hmm.
to the cross.
Yeah.
Um, in verse 15, the verse says, he disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame. I don't think that's necessarily the Jewish leaders, right?
No, I think it's the spiritual powers and forces, the devil. And um, let's see, like I was just taking a look at my ESV study Bible here. It says the cross of Christ marks the decisive defeat of the demonic powers. On the cross, they were stripped of their power to accuse Christians before God. Um, Nevertheless, these demons continue to exist and exercise power to incite evil, so Christians must continue to struggle with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a spiritual battle. He put the death blow to Satan and his minions. Now it's just skirmishes and battles until the end. So
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Um, all right. Well, yeah, thanks. I appreciate Charlie sharing that. And, you know, it back to the concept of unconditional love. There's no commitment required on
mhm,
our part. Christ went and did it anyway.
mhm.
Um, and it really is free choice with, um, taking action on the gift given us. So,
Yeah.
all right. So one of the notables on Sunday was you getting up front and
Yeah.
you didn't know where your notes were.
Oh no. They yeah, so I work on my computer, like 99% of my work is all on the computer, and I have a home server that everything syncs up to. Never had a problem. In fact, the night before I was working kind of late because my grandson was staying with us for 5 days, and so we were focusing on him. I took some time, flexed some time off work, and so I was working late, and I saved the information. But when I even worked on a little bit on Sunday morning when I got to the church service, my pattern is just to print off the final notes there, and they were gone. They're lost somewhere in the cloud. The cloud has
That is
consumed them.
maddening.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I never found him. Never found him. So I thought, well, I had some ProPresenter slides already made up, so I knew what a few of the things I was going to say. Um, and so yeah, I just tried to reconstruct some things from memory, and and like I said on Sunday, I done my homework. I'd spent plenty of hours studying the passage and everything, but I don't know how it came across, but we made it through it.
Yeah, I thought you did great. When did you finally settle in and get through being rattled or whatever? Or do you not normally get rattled?
Well, I was more rattled when I first realized I don't have access to my notes. So then and then went back to my office and just prayed and said, "Okay, God, I know there's some things I remember, you know, that were some key points, but then there were some other things though that got added at the last minute. Like that's when I came up with the so what do we do now in between?
Mm,
Those several things came out of that half hour before the message. So we're gonna yeah, it's good. Yeah, I said it was Dependence Day for me, and
right.
um, and it was a good experience. Um, yeah, um, I'd like not to repeat it too often. It was first time I think, and probably I think I can't remember in 34 years, 33 years I've been doing that I've
Yeah,
ever not had at least a note card. I mean, the first couple of years I manuscripted everything word for word, even though I didn't sit there and read it, but I manuscripted it and such. And I don't do that. I more have kind of a detailed annotation now.
right, right.
So
Well, yeah, and like you said a couple of sessions ago, this is your first time teaching in Hebrews.
right.
A
Yep.
double whammy. But yeah, I thought you did a really nice job.
Thank you.
Um, what were maybe a couple of the main themes that you hope the Saints took home with them and are marinating on this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the main takeaways there from those verses in chapter 2 was really, Christ um, came down as a man, and that um, he had to suffer in order to be glorified, if you will, and sit at the right hand of the Father. But and even though we know he's reigning and ruling, we don't necessarily see all that come. It's not fully visible here, meaning we're not at a place in time when all things are where justice is always done and all things being made right, that kind of thing. We're in this in between. He's already Lord of Lord and King of Kings, seated at the right hand of God the Father in heaven. Um, and yet, like the people in Hebrews there that were being written to, they were experiencing persecution and all kinds of troubles. And so there's this temptation to question, like, well, God, if you're really reigning, why does it really stink down here? And why is all this stuff happening to us? And, and so, because really the big picture in the book is that he's encouraging them to persevere and not to turn away from Christ,
Yeah,
not to stop following him. So,
yeah, yeah.
so I think just
Good.
remember that we're Christ is ruling and reigning, and the stuff we see here now, we endure it, we persevere through it, we live through it for His glory. Um, doesn't mean that He's not ruling and reigning.
Yeah. Um, and it's not a direct analogy or parallel, but it is interesting watching the Europeans report out that America is completely different than what they had been led to believe. So,
Oh,
based on what they had heard back home, Um, many had been came here with a little bit of trepidation that they might get deported. Um, and America is mean, and there's police everywhere,
Right.
um, and it's dangerous. And the reality is, these folks are just they're going gaga. And one, they take some trips to some of like I saw one guy with the Grand Tetons. He couldn't get over how beautiful America is.
Mm.
There was another guy commenting, walking down the street in one of the big cities that they were watching. The World Cup is all over North America and Mexico.
Right.
And so there's plenty of big cities for people to go experience. But he was noting that this woman that was really well dressed, um, with a expensive bag like Gucci or something. And he was amazed. Nobody was catcalling at her. Nobody was following her or anything like that. She was walking freely and warmly. And then the folks who are going in American retail, for instance, Costco, going,
You're right.
what is this? It's like a stadium in here. And they're pulling up the crazy sized American portions and all this stuff. But one was this woman from France, and she was in Target, and she saw a woman go into the dressing room, try on this dress, and come out. And this other woman walking by goes, "Girl, you just look beautiful," and kept on going. And her experience had been when that happens, the person doesn't leave and they keep chatting you up, and they're probably setting
Oh,
you up to ask you for
okay.
money or maybe take advantage of things in another way.
Okay.
And just commenting on how nice American people are. So, all that to say is, you know, our own suffering in light of glory
Hmm.
is a really interesting statement. We have no idea. And Doug's suffering compared to a family that's gone through cancer in America, compared to
Okay.
someone who's gone through illness in the underserved sub-Saharan areas, to and
Sure.
so forth and so on. So, um, for me, that gives me cause to really kind of put it in reverse and back up and start thinking about, yeah, this is a rough day. My suffering is largely emotional and largely because I'm not getting my way.
Right.
Lord help me reset and
Yeah.
let me
Get some
see how,
perspective here,
yeah, yeah. And how
some
can I
global
continue?
perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how can I continue to be your servant and a blessing to others today? So,
That's what I really appreciated when we were doing mission trips abroad.
mm,
You really, I mean, you had the opportunity obviously to share the gospel and everything, but just to see life in a different place, you know,
yeah.
just gives you a different perspective.
Yeah, my third child, one of my daughters that had gone on a trip, she really struggled coming back with some of the whininess of Americans.
Right.
And I remember my oldest, from one of her trips, she she had no idea, and I haven't gone on a foreign trip. Um, if I can't drive back home, I'm not comfortable going.
Right. Submarine's not
But
going to be
right, right. But one of the places you guys went, and I don't know if it was Nicaragua or what was one of the other countries you went to?
Honduras.
Honduras. Um, Houses built out of like 2 liter bottles that people
Mm,
scrapped together and made a wall out of 2 liter bottles. I mean, just
wow.
that level of ingenuity, but poverty just
Right.
really struck with her. I know my third child I was talking about. Um, they had gone to specifically a hospital in the area,
Oh, right. Yeah.
and she was just struck with the strength of the patients that
Mhm.
they had no real medical hope.
Yeah.
Um, but how impressed she was with people's faith there. So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, great way to reset reality. All right. So let's hang a little bit more with context. Oh, you had said something about that besides the words that we're reading, also just taking in the context of why the author is writing about what the author is writing about. So
You're right. Yeah, they're making an argument, or that they're going somewhere with this, and so that's part of understanding how what is the author trying to do. It's not just the pure words and sentences and understanding those, but particularly what are they trying to do, and you can see how it. Then we can really, I think, properly like see how it applies to us.
yeah. Well, thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. It's always great to have a conversation with Greg. Look forward to some conversations with other friends over the next couple of weeks. Again, if you look at the podcast app that you use, look for a way to message us either through text or email or some other way that says send us a message. We'd love to hear from you and maybe even take some of the topics that you pick. All right. Have a great week. Bye bye.